Yes, scouts watched from a distance, hearts pounding, uncertain of what they were seeing. Flags of red fluttered faintly through the haze, soldiers from a land no one expected, North Korea. Their arrival shattered every assumption, every border drawn by politics or reason. Within hours, gunfire cracked the silence, and the forest became a furnace of steel and flame. When the smoke cleared, the ground was littered with helmets and torn cloth. 12 men, gone as if swallowed by the earth. This was not a skirmish, it was a signal. The old world of warfare was dying. In its place rose a new dominion, where modern military equipment dictated fate more than courage. In the heart of Ukraine, a new kind of battle had begun, silent, digital, merciless. Late October 2025. In the damp forests east of Kyiv, a strange stillness ruled the air. Reconnaissance teams moved like shadows between the trees, their boots sinking into wet leaves, their eyes fixed on the flicker of thermal screens. Something moved, their ears, organized, disciplined, and out of place. At first, the high command assumed it was a Russian detachment lost in the fog. But when the drone sent back images of perfect marching lines and geometrically arranged camps, doubt turned into alarm. The pattern was too exact, too foreign. A captured signal changed everything. The voice was sharp, deliberate, and unmistakably Korean. Inside the Ukrainian command bunker, the officers stood silent. The presence of North Korean soldiers on the battlefield was a rumor, whispered for months, never confirmed until now. An order came through the encrypted line at 0400 hours. Under no circumstances, allow this group to withdraw, neutralize completely. The operation was given a name that would soon echo through military circles. Sir White Thunder. At dawn, the Valkyrie unit prepared. 18 elite soldiers, veterans of countless counteroffensives, gathered around a digital map illuminated by pale blue light. Sensors, motion mines, and aerial drones were synchronized into a single web of awareness. To them, the forest was no longer trees and muddies. It was a grid of coordinates and pulse signals, a living battlefield of data. Commander Lysenko traced the enemy's movement on the screen, his finger hovering above the glowing dots. "They are not here to fight long," he said quietly. "They are here to test us." Outside, the fog thickened. UAVs hovered above the canopy, transmitting images in real time. Every heartbeat of the forest was recorded, measured, and transformed into numbers. The soldiers of Valkyrie checked their rifles and comms, faces dim under the red glow of tactical lamps. In the silence before the storm, one of them whispered, "So this is the future of walls, watching ghosts through a lens." The order came. Operation White Thunder began. At 0417, the first artillery shells screamed through the mist. From the southern ridge, Ukrainian howitzers thundered, their shockwaves rolling across the valley like the heartbeat of an awakening beast. The shells landed with dreadful precision. 2 enemy outposts and a makeshift communication tower vanished in orange flame. Moments later, Valkyrie moved. 3 assault teams advanced from west, north, and east, converging silently like the blades of a closing scissor. Within seconds, the calm forest turned into chaos. Branches shattered under machine gun fire. Tracer rounds carved red streaks across the fog. The North Korean soldiers responded with astonishing speed, erecting sandbag barriers and firing rocket-propelled grenades that tore open the trees. Yet their line was too rigid, their tactics too predictable. Every time they shifted, a drone hovering above adjusted coordinates and called in another strike. A new kind of warfare unfolded, one where the enemy was never unseen, only delayed by seconds. "Target zone, Bravo!" murmured a voice through the comms. Commander Lysenko raised his hand. From the tree line, mortar shells arced upward, guided by digital positioning. The explosions were almost surgical, cutting gaps into the enemy's defense. Still, the Koreans fought back ferociously, their shouts, mixed with the roar of gunfire, echoing through the woods like an ancient chant of defiance. One Valkyrie soldier, pinned behind a fallen log, whispered into his radio, "They fight like ghosts. They do not retreat." By sunrise, the operation had reached its climax. Smoke hung low, thick as cloth, illuminated by flashes of light. Through the shattered foliage, the surviving Koreans tried to escape eastward, riding small motorbikes scavenged from their supply line. They darted through the undergrowth, but above them the eye of the sky never blinked. Thermal UAVs traced their heat signatures, painting their paths in red on the command center's map. Coordinates were relayed in real time as each movement answered by precision mortar fire. One by one, the signals disappeared. When silence finally returned, the forest was a graveyard of burnt metal and blackened soil. 12 bodies lay among the ruins, their red flags half buried in ash. Valkyrie had lost 3 men, lightly wounded but forever changed. Lysenko stood amidst the smoke, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun was breaking through. "They came from far away," he murmured, "but what they brought was closer than we think. The proof that courage without technology is no longer enough." The sound of UAVs faded. Operation White Thunder was over. By midday, the forest was silent again. Smoke drifted between the scorched trees, curling like whispers of something sacred. Drones hovered above, recording every scar in the landscape, every body that refused to be forgotten. The Valkyrie unit withdrew slowly, their faces pale, uniforms torn by shrapnel. Around them, the remnants of war, crumpled helmets, twisted rifles, fragments of encrypted radio ZOW lay scattered like relics of a fading age. Among the debris, an identity tag glinted faintly beneath the soot. On it was carved a single line in Hangul for the motherland. Hours later, the footage of the operation reached Kyiv. The evidence was undeniable. As 12 North Korean soldiers confirmed dead, their weapons catalogued, their insignia sealed in military archives. For Ukraine, it was a tactical victory and a political revelation. For Pyongyang, it became a matter of pride and mourning. Within days, state broadcasts announced the repatriation of the fallen. The world watched as a grey transport plane touched down at Pyongyang International Airport. Hundreds of soldiers lined the runway in perfect symmetry. Each coffin was draped in the red and blue flag of the Korean People's Army, carried by an honor guard to the sound of drums and brass. Leader Kim Jong-un stood beneath a dark canopy, his head bowed, his face unreadable. The nation grieved, not for the cause, but for the memory of sacrifice. In his speech, he called them heroes, the loyal sons who carried our spirit to foreign soil. The crowd answered in solemn unison. Yet, beneath the ritual and the music, there was a silence that no anthem could fill. At that same moment, far away in the forests of Ukraine, Commander Lysenko lit a small candle on the broken hull of a destroyed armored truck. "They fought well," he said quietly. "But bravery without eyes to see is blindness." The flame flickered, reflected in the steel around him. In that brief shimmer, war revealed its truest facer. Not victory or defeat, but the fragile line between them. And as the wind rose, it carried the faint echo of the fallen flags, whispering across continents, reminding both sides that courage and technology now shared the same grave. The night before the storm, Kramatorsk slept under a pale autumn moon. The fields were quiet, the air still heavy with the scent of wet soil. But above that fragile calm, a formation was already moving. 8 Su-34 bombers crossing the border from Milerovo Air Base. Their engines pulsed like thunder trapped beneath the clouds. In their bellies, the machines carried destruction, cruise missiles, guided bombs, and the conviction that nothing could stand against them. At 0430, the first tremor came. A blinding flash tore open the sky, followed by the roar of explosions rolling across the city. Windows shattered, alarms wailed, and flames leapt from the fuel depots near the rail yards. Civilians stumbled from their homes, eyes wide with disbelief as a red glow painted the horizon. The assault had begun, a symphony of fire and precision that stretched across the heavens. In the command bunker beneath the earth, radar screens flared with crimson streaks. Multiple inbound targets, the duty officer announced, voice trembling. Colonel Danlo raised his head from the console. How many minutes? 5, came the answer. 5 minutes? So that was all between life and annihilation. Orders erupted through the corridors. Sirens howled. Technicians slammed switches, waking the sleeping shield of the nation. Across the hills, launchers lifted their metallic necks to the sky. Patriot batteries locked on to the approaching signatures. Iris-T systems came alive, scanning the low altitudes where the bombers swooped like hunting crows. In hangars farther west, F-16 squadrons roared to life, engines screaming as they taxied into the darkness. Above it all, a single AWACS aircraft circled like an all-seeing eye, linking radar and missile through an invisible web of data. At 0435, the two worlds collided. The Su-34s released their payloads, sleek shapes cutting through the air like blades of light. A second later, the sky responded. Dozens of interceptors rose in white trails, meeting the falling fire in midair. The horizon turned into a blinding theater of light and sound, where courage and technology merged into one. Below, inside the bunker, Colonel Danlo whispered, "This is Itako, the moment when the sky decides the ground." And outside, the dawn bled red. The battle reached its fever point as dawn broke over eastern Ukraine. The first wave of missiles had already torn through the sky, leaving behind trails of smoke and burning fragments that rained down over the fields. 4 of the Su-34s were downed almost instantly, torn apart by Patriot interceptors that struck with pinpoint precision. But the remaining bombers pressed on, the silhouettes gliding low over the mist, engines howling like beasts refusing to die. Inside the command bunker, the air was thick with voices. Incoming is south, southwest quadrant. 2 more targets. Adjust battery 2 by 3 degrees. Radar operators leaned close to their screens, watching the crimson dots move ever closer to the city. Then, from the static, a new sound rose, the thunder of jet engines, human, defiant. 9 F-16. 5 Block 70 fighters screamed into the sky, splitting formation as they ascended through the rising smoke. Above the clouds, the pilots could see the chaos beneath them, streaks of light, black plumes twisting like serpents, fragments of fire suspended in the morning air. "This is Falcon Leader. Locking target 1, came a voice through the radio, calm but heavy. The radar locked. A tone sounded, and down Fox 3. The missile launched, a white spear cutting through the grey expanse. Seconds later, an orange bloom erupted ahead. Another Su-34 disintegrated mid-air, its wreckage tumbling into the fog below. The remaining Russian bombers tried to flee, diving and weaving through the flak. Electronic decoys burst open like fireflies, scattering false signals across the radar. But Ukraine's network held firm. AWACS tracked every move, fusing radar data from ground and sky into one perfect web. In this battle, knowledge was the weapon and data was the blade. "They cannot hide," said Falcon 2, "not anymore." His voice was steady, as if he spoke of a fate already written. The final confrontation came swiftly. 2 Su-34s broke east, climbing in desperation. 3 F-16s followed, their engines screaming through the thin air. At 2,000 meters, the lead pilot pulled the trigger. Another missile streaked forth, its vapor trail shining in the sun like a comet. A second explosion, gloom, a brief sun in a wounded sky. The last Russian aircraft turned, wounded, its right wing aflame. It limped towards the border, a dying machine tracing its final path. When silence fell, the pilots circled once more over the city. The battlefield below was still burning, but the threat was gone. Inside the bunker, Colonel Danilo stood motionless, eyes fixed on the radar now fading to blue. "We held," he said softly, not by strength, but by sight. Outside, the horizon glowed crimson. The war in the sky had ended, but its echo lingered as proof that victory now belonged to those who could see beyond the clouds. By 6 o'clock that morning, the sky above Kramatorsk was a canvas of smoke and ash. The battle was over. 7 of the 8 Su-34s had fallen, their wreckage scattered across the eastern plains. The last limped home, its fuselage torn, leaving a black scar across the horizon. For Ukraine, the defense had held. For Russia, the blow was staggering. Yen, hundreds of millions lost in less than 2 hours. Yet beneath the celebration, a deeper silence spread through the command rooms and the ruined streets alike. In the city below, rescue teams moved among the wreckage. Fires still burned, where the few missiles that broke through had struck residential blocks. Windows lay shattered, streets littered with glass and ash. Mothers held their children close, their faces pale beneath the flicker of emergency lights. Ambulances wailed through the morning air, their cries blending with the hiss of cooling metal. Amidst the ruins, the surviving airmen from Valkyrie, redeployed as ground observers, knelt to help civilians. The technology had saved thousands, but it had not saved all. Inside the bunker, Colonel Danilo removed his headset and stared at the fading radar screen. The room that had pulsed with chaos moments ago now seemed hollow, filled only with the hum of machinery. "We fought with numbers, not with faces," he murmured. "But every number was a life." His aide nodded, silent. Outside, the rising sun revealed the full extent of the damage. A city bruised but unbroken, its people stepping through smoke towards another uncertain day. At evening, as dusk fell over the silent airfield, the soldiers of Valkyrie stood together watching the last of the fires die out. One of them whispered, "The sky saved us." Another answered, "Noah, the people who built the sky did." Above them, a lone drone drifted in the red light, circling slowly before vanishing into the clouds. It was a fitting symbol of the age they lived in, a time where machines bore witness to both victory and grief, and where progress carried the weight of every soul it had tried to protect. When the echoes of war fade, what remains is not the sound of victory but the whisper of those who endured. From the misty forests of the east to the burning skies of Kramatorsk, 2 battles have told one truth, that the future no longer belongs to strength alone, but to understanding. In this new era, courage walks hand in hand with circuitry, instinct breathes through data. The soldier and the machine are no longer enemies, but extensions of the same fragile will to survive. Operation White Thunder and the Sky, Inferno, 2 fronts of the same awakening. One fought in the shadows of trees, the other in the blazing heavens. Both revealed that precision, information, and timing have replaced the chaos of chance. In this transformation, military equipment has become more than steel. It has become thought made visible, intellect turned into armor. Yet with every advance, a question lingers. How much of the human heart must be surrendered for efficiency? Commander Lysenko's words still echo through the corridors of command. Bravery without eyes to see is blindness. He was right. But now another truth rises beside it. Technology without conscience is emptiness. For every drone that saves a platoon, a city remembers the smoke it left behind. For every missile that protects, another child learns the language of fear. And so the balance continues, fragile as glass beneath the weight of progress. In the end, the lesson is simple yet eternal. Military equipment defines the rhythm of our age. Military equipment carries both salvation and sorrow. And through every piece of military equipment, humanity writes its story, again sometimes in triumph, sometimes in tears, but always in the hope that one day these machines of war will guard not the battlefield, but the peace that follows. Like, share, and subscribe for stories that remember the human heartbeat behind the metal, the silence behind the victory, and the light that still flickers in the ashes. When the fog of war rises over the eastern plains, it does not ask who is right or wrong. It only asks who can endure. In the ghostly mist of dawn, shapes moved without sound, their steps measured, their eyes fixed on an invisible command.